Bonjour! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Fasten up your seatbelt and enjoy this journey into Muse World with Lamia Norbert.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Me as Well. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank every one of you for all your sweet comments and your follows and your like and your share. It really means a lot. Honestly, it's a motivation for me on a daily basis to keep pushing and keep doing what I'm doing at the moment. So thank you so much. And today, I have a special guest. She's one of the sweetest soul I got the chance to meet at Mulai. Now that you know about Mulai, I've met a lot of people, but she was one of the sweetest soul I had the greatest opportunity to meet. We started to talk and we connected very, very quickly. And today she's on my podcast. Hi, Chery.
Hi. Thank you for saying that. That was really sweet. And so are you.
Thank you.
Great minds meet great minds.
Heck yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It means a lot.
Thank you. I've been really excited to do this. Honestly, it's been nerve-wracking. This is my first time on a podcast, so I'm looking forward to sharing this experience with you. My first time with you. I can't think of a better person to do this with. So thanks.
Oh, baby. You just gotta get me emotional.
We need to get tissues.
Yeah, probably. Guys, it might be emotional. But before we dig into that part, I have a tradition.
Okay.
And I'll just guide you through how I usually start it because I am a big fan to know about my guest early years because for me, my early years shaped a lot about my personality and where I am today in my life. So tell me a little bit more about little Chery.
Little Chery, big Chery now.
Yeah.
I was born in Nigeria.
Okay.
So I lived there till I was about 12, 13. I think I left at 12. Then I moved to Canada. This is like the basics, right?
Yeah,
the skeleton.
yeah.
Then I moved to Canada till I was 18. Then Dubai for a year for university, for my first year of university. Michigan for 3.5 years. I failed a semester, so I had to drag it on for an extra 6 months. And then I moved here, 2014, been here ever since. And all of those spaces that I lived in were quite interesting upon reflection. Obviously, these reflections only came up, I guess, recently, where I realized I never was at home in any of those places. So Dubai is, interestingly, the most homey home I've ever lived in. Yes, in terms of years, it outranks Nigeria now. But I think earlier on in my time here, when I started to be more accepting of the fact that this was my next place or my last place, I think, it started to feel like home because everyone belongs here because nobody belongs here. And therefore, I belong here. So it kind of did heal a part of me. But Nigeria being the second longest stint, that was a really beautiful experience. Good childhood, great family, blessings on blessings with them. But did have a rough going when I first started school.
Okay.
And I think we've talked about this as well off air, about how that's been a pivotal part of my life, dealing with teachers that weren't necessarily the best, how that's led me to where I am now as an educator, semi-retired educator, I suppose. So of course, upon reflection, my childhood has been supremely important. And I think as people, we neglect the importance of looking backwards or looking inward into those
100%.
multiple layers.
Exactly.
But the moment you do that, you see all these synchronicities from your childhood dreams to your childhood issues or childhood, joys and how they come up in our older lives. So thank you for asking about this. I think it's really important
100%.
to spend a moment to realize that you were just layers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like to, there's different way you can see it. You can see it like a Russian doll. You can see it like a flower that keeps, you remove
An
one
onion.
an onion, exactly. It's like, but all of this makes who we are and it build up to the person and human being that we are today. And that's why I really like to dig into this because I really think it shapes the way that we are today. Like think about it. Now, you mentioned about the fact that how you had a bad experience with a teacher when you were younger. And then now you went, obviously afterwards you went and pursued that career because you wanted to make the difference. Right?
Exactly. And the thing is, we all make decisions on a subconscious level that have to do with our experiences in the past.
Yeah.
And the Matryoshka doll, the Russian dolls, I love that metaphor. In fact, my friend, a really good friend of mine, got me a Matryoshka doll set, which is beside my TV, and it always reminds me to think about the inside.
Yeah.
And we all make decisions that have to do with the decisions or the things that were decided for us in our younger years. And that's normal. Every single one of us do it. But the thing that we don't always practice is consciously realizing the links that it has in our lives. And I think that's my biggest thing these days, is cultivating self-awareness to a degree that might be a bit too much. Once you do it a lot and it becomes too much, then you sort of start to like self-manage it, and it becomes a normal level of self-awareness that you can function with. It doesn't become oppressive. And that's my big thing for people. Like, self-awareness is free. You have to know why you do the specific things that you do. Not to a degree where this is like the only thing you do, but I mean, it's a beautiful gift. It's a painful gift. It's a beautiful gift.
I know, it's funny you said it's a painful gift, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because obviously, you know, my listeners knows, like the people that know me knows that obviously I grew up between two islands, between Mauritius and Madagascar. It was always back and forth. As much as they're close to each other, the culture is very different, and it can be very painful sometimes when you go through this. But then when I reflect and I think about it now, I'm like, I'm actually grateful I had these tough times, because without this, I would have learned all the things that I needed. And it's like almost, you know, like that soldier that goes to war, and like you're like, if I didn't train or if I didn't have all my stuff with me, I wouldn't be ready for war.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's wonderful when you realize, I guess the thing that we need, I saw this on Instagram and I didn't watch the full post. It was a very long one, and I just got the snippet of it and I just kind of left it. But it said that to destroy your life, it can take, you know, you can do that in 6 hours. But to build your life, it takes ages. It takes a long, long time. And it's really challenging for people to realize that it takes work. All of it takes work. It is a lot of effort to build that awareness, to realize that all of these things play a massive part, and to look at the lessons that come from it. You know, I've been trying to retroactively go back in time and look at all the lessons and the bad things that I've experienced because of my choices or choices of others. And to do that has been painful. And you know this, we've had conversations in the past as well about how this has been such a pivotal time in my life, because I'm sort of backdating and doing all the work I should have done. And it is a lot of effort. There have been times where I've cried. There have been times where I've cried of sadness, of joy, of excitement, of nervousness, everything, anger even, just a lot of tears this year. But then the more you do that in the past for the past things and you see the lessons, the more I'm looking at the lessons now. And immediately I find that rebound period has gotten shorter and shorter. Just the other day, there was a massive flood in my apartment, like massive.
I have a leakage in my apartment right now.
It's the worst. But you know what? Actually, though, it was the best. A couple of synchronicities. So I've been looking at signs as well. This is sort of a digression, but I think it's quite hilarious. I just came back from Turkey not that long ago, and I bought the evil eye mandala things to hang medallions.
Yeah, the blue
glass things.
yeah.
Yeah. You get it. I got one for my apartment, and I got one for my car. And the one in my apartment had been on my table for quite a while, maybe 10 days. And then finally, a couple of nights ago, I was like, okay, I need to put this up. I found a hook. I hooked it up on the inside of my door. All was good. You know, I'm warding away evil spirits, chilling. The next day I went out and I was doing my thing, and I got a text from Diwa saying my consumption had increased by 100 and something odd %. Check if there's any leakages. And I was like, what is this? It's ridiculous. Whatever. Came home, and sure enough, my entire apartment had flooded.
Jesus.
All the way from, well, you've never been to my apartment, but from my main bathroom to the front door, it's quite a journey for the water to go, right? And this is just this is a lesson in lessons, or looking for lessons. The first 5 minutes, obviously, I panicked. You know, I called people. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Everything is flooded. My carpets are ruined. The wires, I don't know about the wires, electricity. I don't know what's going to happen. And then I think within 5 to 10 maybe minutes, the people had come to help. Godsend. Everyone who helped me are absolute angels, right? But within 5 to 7 minutes, I was laughing. I'm like, this is hilarious. First of all, the evil eye. I don't know what it's warding away. Clearly, there was an energy that had to come out. I don't know. But the lesson in there was patience. The lesson in there was, I've been decluttering a lot recently, like really trying to shed things that I don't need anymore, like old Christmas cards, I don't need them. And it was like the universal way of telling me, look, you wanted to clean under your couch. You wanted to do this. You wanted to make sure your things were out of your place and you're starting fresh. I'm going to show you what fresh is. I'm going to put water everywhere, vacuum it up, and see how you feel after that. And the entire time that this was happening, where my cats were freaking out, I was on a subconscious level freaking out. The people were just trying to figure out what to do with the water. I was like, there's a lesson here. The lesson here is letting go. The lesson here is cleaning internally, externally, whatever it may be. And that rebound period and seeing the lesson in that, just full circle moment back to what we were talking about, I immediately saw the lesson in that. And I was just like, this is beautiful. I can finally clean under my couch. It's been 3 years. So I found a lot of things. A pair of little scissors that I thought that I had lost anyway. But it was really cool to see that all of the effort that I've been putting into looking at the lessons from the major past events of my life, seeing the good in that, seeing how I'm able to do that almost exactly in the moment of a pretty challenging experience. Yes, it's just a flood. And yes, I've been blessed with 6 people to come and help me vacuum it, but I could see the lesson immediately.
Yeah.
And this is beautiful.
Exactly. And I think I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because obviously I'm sorry about that.
Oh my God. I cleaned under my couch.
I know that pain because I'm going through the same thing at the moment. But what I can tell you is that I like the way that you tackle the problem and your perspective. I'm gonna get there. Perspective of things just shift. But obviously, what I want to share here is that it doesn't come overnight, that change of perspective.
Oh my God. No.
It's not something that you're like, okay, I'm going to be, because I feel like a lot of people misunderstand this, when you're working on yourself. It's not something that you wake up the next day and it just happens.
No.
It is a constant work of in progress. But what I want to know is, based on all these years that you've traveled, and I assume you must have tried to understand who you were because you lived in different countries, adjusted and readjusted. When did you find that you find yourself who you really were?
Do you know what? I feel like first thing that I want to say is I never had to find who I really was because I've always been that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that idea of finding yourself might be a bit of a misnomer. I discovered something the other day about myself. And I don't know if this is going to sort of answer your question, and I'll go back into it. I realized that if I ever say I don't know and I don't care, it actually is the complete opposite. If I say I don't know, it means that I actually do know exactly what I want, what I need at that time, what I'm feeling, but I'm just too scared to actually bring it to the surface. Because just before we started the podcast, we were talking about emptying that kitchen drawer, that metaphorical kitchen drawer that we have that's full of junk. The moment I admit that I know, it means that I have to open up that drawer and fix and clean everything inside. I have to do the work. Wow. So if I say I don't know, it means that I do know. I'm just unwilling to actually bring that to the surface. So to find myself would imply that I lost myself. I didn't. I never did. Even though I truly intrinsically believed that for years, up until maybe 6 to 8 months ago, I didn't know who I was. I did know who I was. I just didn't want to come face to face with who I was, or who I am, rather. So I hope that answers your
100%.
question.
That's exactly where I wanted to get to, because very often, even I said it myself, where I said I never really knew who I was, because obviously that's how I always felt. But then when you take a step back, just like you did, and you realize you were always the same person. You just grew up, you got experience, you went through things that was good memories, but experiences that that helped you to kind of build that strength from within and make you resilient. But the person that you were is still the same,
Yes and no. Yes and no. The core of us is the same, but I think that we sit in assumption that we aren't actually constantly evolving. And this is an example I use all the time. And it's a very basic example, but I think anyone can apply it to their lives in multiple different ways. It's a very basic example. So recently when people would ask me what my favorite color is, in the small occasions that people would, this is not a conversation that comes up in your 30s anymore, I would say that my favorite color is pink. And I would just keep saying that. Yeah, I love pink. I love pink this, pink that, pink nails, whatever. But when I went to the mall or when I went to go get my nails done, even though they're not done now, I would always just gravitate towards purple. And I found that to be really interesting because I would just keep grabbing purple things. And then I stopped for a second. Yes, this is just about a color, but you can apply this to anything from the big to the small. I'd be like, no, wait, I've been saying something about myself, but clearly I've evolved into something new, or I've just changed into something different, but I haven't been actively aware of this. I haven't been practicing that self-awareness to be able to see there is an evolution that's happening.
100%.
in multiple different ways, even in our taste buds, you know, we'll keep gravitating towards getting the same snack in the grocery store. But then are we just eating it because we want to eat it because it's comfort? Or is that something we're actually enjoying, you know?
Exactly.
Is that something that's bringing out a new version of ourselves or appeasing to a new version of ourselves? You know, the skeleton will always remain the same, but there's something that's constantly changing with us. So this is about the self-awareness, developing that self-awareness, sitting with yourself and being like, what is new about me today? And it is work. It is one of those things that you have to be able to sit through and be able to go on first dates with yourself consistently, and remembering we've all been on dates before. Not every date's going to be great,
100%.
right?
I agree.
You're going to discover something about yourself that you're just like, ooh, all right, okay, well, I'm going to be okay with this. How do we move forward together?
With this.
Yeah.
And I comprehend, and I think you're right, because listen, if we don't evolve, how do we progress?
Exactly.
How do we become the better version of ourselves? But now, one thing that intrigues me, obviously, I know you personally, but one thing I never actually asked you, when did actually that moment came and you were like, okay, I need to raise my self-awareness. I need to be a bit more in, like, how do you say that? Like, focus from the within and work on myself.
Okay, that is a really interesting question, and I love it. I'm going to answer it in multiple different ways.
Go on.
One, the first thing that actually sort of launched my biggest, I guess, active change has been happening in the past 6 to 8 months, maybe a little bit more than that. And that's been the active process. But of course, like I was saying to you before, we're constantly like evolving and growing. That's been happening on a subconscious level since the day I was born, just like you, just like everybody else. But the active part of it started when I had a bit of a tricky situation with the job that I had just left. And that forced me to either sink or swim mentally. Luckily, in terms of like my support system, I'm so well protected and loved that without a job, I'm okay. I'm great. You know, I have the space to develop and grow. So that was the big thing where I was like, this could ruin me if I allow it to, because that job was not a job, it was my life. That was a huge defining factor of the way I saw myself. I saw myself as an employee, in this establishment. I saw myself doing this job, and this was my defining factors. If you were to ask me before everything happened, how would you define yourself? I would give you my name, my ethnicity, my job, and the place I worked at. That's it.
Can I just stop you quickly?
Absolutely.
Why was this job so important to you?
It was a healing thing. Well, first of all, I am a person that will make a family wherever I go. I will do my best to make a family wherever I go. And I get really attached to things. I romanticize all of the smaller things, like the printer, the traffic on the way there, my parking spot. You know, I'll romanticize like the smaller like rituals that we create for ourselves without even being aware that we create these rituals, like coming up from that staircase to do this, to say hello to this person, to do that. That was my ritual. So it was a sad thing. It is a sad thing for me to know that I won't be able to repeat those rituals ever again. But I'm so grateful that I had that as an experience. So I create a home, I created a family, and with 60 to 80% of that family, if not more, I'll never see them again. And working with children, especially, you know, I see them as, you know, reflections of myself. We're all mirrors of each other. So I'd see myself in the children that I would teach, and I'm like, you sweet angel, you've got so much in front of you. I cannot wait to see what you do, but I'll never know what you do. So that's that.
Okay.
But during this process, when it started to become really difficult, my friend sent me something on Instagram. At this point, I was like, okay, Chery, time to start journaling, but journaling for real. All of those little notebooks that you keep buying that are mismatched and it's looking really terrible on your bookshelf. Just do it, and do it from with whatever perspective or method you want to use. And she sent me this. It said, you are not in survival mode because of the very fact that you're able to think about your internal journey, your anxieties and your worries means that you're not surviving anymore. Something like that. I can't remember the exact words. And at that moment, I was like, holy shit, I'm actually not surviving. I've never been surviving. Nothing has attacked me. Nothing has hurt me. My livelihood maybe is in trouble, but I still have a support system to take care of me. My home is still there. My family is alive. Everyone is safe. I'm safe. And that realization is what took me exactly from where I was to where I am now, which I think doesn't always feel like a huge step. But today and yesterday, it's been feeling like a massive step. The world looks different. Smells smell different. It may not go on forever, but I do feel a change.
I completely agree with you, and it's beautiful. How's your? I struggle with journaling. It took me a long time before I actually enjoyed journaling. For a while it was, and sometimes it does. It's like whenever being an overthinker, it was whenever I was thinking too much. That's when I would grab the journal and start writing it down just to get the thing out of my mind. But making it a routine was very hard for me.
Okay. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that. And I think this is where I had decided that I was not going to do things in the way that people tell me to do things. There are no rules. That's the bottom line. In life, there are the rules, but then there are also no rules, right? To journaling, do you have to do it every day? No. You do things when they're called to you. Do you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm beautiful, I'm loved, I'm beautiful, I'm loved? Do you need to say all those affirmations? No, if it doesn't call to you, don't do it. Yeah. There was a point where I was following the rules of healing, which was to say positive affirmations. And I remember once I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. And I kept saying that to myself and I didn't particularly feel very beautiful. And I just remember laughing at myself. There was a bit of a smirk and I'm like, Chery, why are you gaslighting yourself? You don't feel beautiful. Stop saying that you feel beautiful. And I was like, but this is what you're supposed to do if you want to heal. You're supposed to tell yourself all the positive things and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what, Chery? You do it your own way, and somehow or another, I got to that point of self-love and appreciating what I look like and whatever. But the point of it is I wasn't doing what I kept seeing on Instagram. I did it my own way. With journaling, I did it my own way. If I want to do a mind map, I'll do a mind map. If I want to make a list, I'll make a list. If I want to play tic-tac-toe in there, it doesn't matter to me. You can do whatever you want. Do not force yourself to do something that doesn't come innately from within you. My sister always told me this. She's like, Chery, when there's a calling, follow it. But if there's no calling, don't worry about it.
Leave it,
yeah. If you don't feel like journaling, don't do it. If you want to write a letter, write a letter. I've written 1,000 letters in my journal to random people, to myself, to my mom. They're not going to go anywhere. I just felt, today I'm going to write a letter. Okay, cool. And that's it. So just don't force yourself to do anything that doesn't feel authentically right. Life is too short and life is too beautiful.
I agree. That's beautiful. What was the part you'd say once you started that self-awareness journey? What was the part that you think you struggled the most with?
Being able to trust my delusions. That's what I call it now. Building that feeling of self-trust, trusting that whenever I felt that moment. So I viewed it as, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. When I was in high school, I had a lot of mental health issues, as had been progressing through my life, some diagnosed, some undiagnosed. And I remember there was one diagnosis that I had gotten, and I think I'm going to get it wrong because I haven't researched it at all since then. I think it was called dysthymia. I can't remember. But I remember the guy saying, this is 18 years ago, where it was like I was functioning at a lower level. So there's the normal level of just feeling, I guess. Yeah. And then there's a lower level where it's just persistent sadness. It isn't depressive episodes, but it's persistent sadness. And there was that. And so I viewed my life as a line. And then as I've been going on through my ages, the oscillations were getting a little bit bigger. I would feel happy and I would feel a little bit sadder. I'd feel happy and then I'd feel a little bit sadder. I'm like, okay, well, I'm feeling both the emotions now and I'm feeling them a bit more than I used to feel. It was just persistent sadness, just feeling a bit glum. And then now that oscillation's gotten massive, massive. Like I will feel joy like it's like euphoric, and I'll be like crying tears of joy when I see a beautiful sunrise. I'll be crying tears of joy when I hear a song that I'm just like, wow, this is masterful creation. Holy shit. But I would feel in equal parts incredibly, incredibly sad.
Okay.
As of late, like my tears situation in the past 6 to 8 months has been immense. I'm constantly crying over everything. And that it's at the periods of the lows where I stopped trusting myself. I stopped trusting the delusions that I was creating when I was at my peaks.
Okay.
And that was the difficult part. I would always remember when I was feeling happy, but remember, Chery, you can always feel like shit again. And all of that you were believing is bullshit. The universe doesn't exist. Nobody has your back. Everything is random, blah, blah, blah. And then I would peak again and I would be like, no, Chery, everything is fine. Everything is fine. You're great. The universe is there for you. God is there, or whoever is there for you is going to support you and love you. And what's more, you love yourself. So don't forget that. So it was that little gap between the low and the high that I found the hardest.
Okay.
Because you're always going to go low again.
100%.
Always. But then after that, you're always going to go high again.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it just made me think a little bit. I love a little bit of a metaphor. So it reminds me, like, I used to love this quote. I may quote it very badly.
I've been quoting everything wrong.
So it's like, for example, after every rainfall, there's always a rainbow. Or like every sunset, there's always a promise of a sunrise. So you've got, I think everything in life can never be a high, happy moment. Otherwise, you have to not always, but you have to go through those hard moments to be able to appreciate those high moments. Now, that's my perception of things. But one thing that you've mentioned several times is that you've cried a lot. And
I love a good cry.
I feel like for someone who's now able to be extremely vulnerable, because as a kid, I was always called a crybaby because I would cry very easily. Until now, I would still cry very easily. I see someone crying, it's more than enough for me to cry with that person, even though I don't know
What a beautiful thing, by the way. Can I just say, to cry when other people cry, that is like the peak of empathy. That's such a beautiful thing. So I'm sorry that you experienced that, but carry on.
It's fine. It made me who I am today. But like, honestly, and I think over time I've built a shield around me that I was like, no, you can't cry. You've got to be strong and all of that. But when I started with Malai, that's when I found myself reaching that vulnerable state again, allowing myself to actually feel the emotion. If I wanted to cry, I would cry. And I'd be like, you know what? It's fine. Who cares what people think? Who cares about X, Y, Z? And the fact that you're saying that you have cried a lot and you being vulnerable, I think this is so beautiful, because I believe people think that nowadays you are not supposed to show this side of you. And it's so sad. But I feel like it's such a beautiful thing to just be like, yeah, this is how I feel. It's like accepting your emotion.
It's accepting your emotions and being able to ride that wave. You know, if you suppress it, it's going to keep bubbling. It's like those pressure cookers, right?
Yeah.
You hold that pressure and it's going to come out. It's like using the bathroom. You're going to need to go to the bathroom. If you keep holding it in, you're going to have to go, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. And you have to just let it release. And if you release it, then you realize that you have all that space within you to just sort of play around and then just like do whatever you need to do. You can go on existing and living and thriving or whatever. You have to let it out. And the moment you start to accept the sad tears, you will find yourself accepting and loving every other emotion that you have. Anger was something that was a big problem for me growing up. Like, I was a very, very angry person.
Okay.
I used to be able to move like wrought iron beds across carpet at like 11 years old. I would just redecorate my furniture in my bedroom because I was just so filled with rage. And I was also a very lanky, weak child. So I don't know how I managed to muster up the energy to lift beds and move them across carpeted floors and move other bits. But this is the way I had to release my anger, was by moving things and probably damaging my back in the process. But as of recent, the biggest thing that I've started to accept, my tears have always been just a part of me. I accept it. It is what it is. But my rage, my anger, that's something that I couldn't accept. I'm like, that's a really ugly thing to experience. And I was talking to my therapist ages ago about how I was really angry about a situation that has led me to where I am now. And she was like, your anger is a beautiful thing. Your anger is protecting you. Your anger is fighting for you. And the moment I realized that my anger, even in the past, I was channeling it the wrong way, but I was young. What are you going to do? I was channeling that anger against myself. And the only thing that I could do to deal with that frustrating emotion that we try to suppress was to hate myself and then to move things around.
Yeah.
Just to sort of reinvent some part of me, gain control over some part of my living environment. Now that anger that I've had a hard time accepting is my best friend. The moment I feel angry, I channel that anger to anger against myself, to anger for myself. I become my own mother. And I'm like, that's an injustice. Chery, fight that injustice. You speak your mind. You're your own mom. Tell people that they were wrong and do whatever you need to do. And it's such a mobilizing force. So in terms of your sadness and your tears and not being able to accept it, that's a fundamental part of your emotions, first of all. It's a beautiful thing. It's a release. That's all it is. It's a cleanse, right?
Yeah.
Inward and outward. For anger, that was mine that I had a hard time accepting. But now I realize it's a beautiful force if I know how to control it.
Yeah.
Like fire, if you uncontrolled, it's terrible. If controlled, it's a beautiful thing. But it all comes down to self-acceptance, self-awareness. Where is it coming from? What is it trying to tell us? This emotion serves a purpose.
Okay. And now let's dig a little bit more about your journey.
Sure.
That journey in that self-awareness moment. So you said that obviously you kind of made peace with who you were, and then you started to also journal.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other things that helped you kind of finding you that being where you are today?
Honestly, there's nothing that I'm doing. That's the thing. When I was leaving my job, in all of the farewell speeches, I was identified as a very spiritual person constantly. Like in speeches, Chery spiritual. And this little gift that I had gotten, they had written 3 adjectives to describe me. 2 of them were, I guess, accurate. And then the other one was spiritual. And I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? Like, I don't meditate every day. I don't journal every day. I exercise daily just because I have started to enjoy it for the first time in my life. But there's nothing I do consistently that is outward enough for me to say this is a part of my journey and this is what I'm doing. It just happened where I decided that I love myself enough to see everything that I do as a healing journey and just do it. I know that when I had depressive episodes when I was younger, the biggest thing I could do for myself on a day was maybe brush my teeth, maybe take a shower, maybe wash my dishes. And that was my big challenge. And there were times where I would view doing that as, Chery, you're disgusting. The most you could do today is brush your teeth. But then there were other days, even then, where I was like, Chery, you brushed your teeth. Good for you. I'm happy that in this state, you were able to do at least one thing to take care of yourself. And even if I did nothing to take care of myself, I kept myself alive from the morning to the night. That's a beautiful thing, 100%. Right? So I guess it's just less about what I'm doing outwardly and more the internal compassion that I'm trying to cultivate every single day. Slowly trying to get away from the negative self-talk. Why would I call myself a stupid bitch, for example? Which is what I had called myself so many times. That was an ongoing dialogue. To now just being like, no, sure, you spilled some water. That's okay. Let's clean it up. Oh, your apartment flooded. That's okay. Let's clean it up. The smaller things, it's just that dialogue shift that I woke up one morning and I said, look, I'm going to have hopefully, and I wouldn't always, this is a new thing for me to say, but I hopefully have at least 40 years left on this planet. I can't do the math. I'm 30 now. Plus 40, 70, some
70.
70. Yeah, that's
I'm bad at math. That's
70,
why I was scared.
40, 50 years. I don't know. I God willing, will have a good 50 years left here. Am I going to keep the same patterns of thinking? Probably not. And my sister was pivotal in this entire experience. She was telling me, well, she's going through her own journey in this past year. It's sort of like she held my hand, I held her hand. That was the kind of thing that we had going. And she kept telling me, she's like, Chery, you can either live in love or you can live in fear. And that sort of thing came up quite often where I realized fear was my go-to. Fear and anger in the bad way was my go-to. The bad way was my go-to. And I realized that every time I slipped into that belief of fear, anger, sadness, resentment, jealousy, guilt, whatever, that was my comfortable path. You know, you take the path that's most comfortable for you, even though it's gross, even though it's uncomfortable, you'll go to what you're used to. I'm going to go down the mind or the pathway that I've cultivated for 30 odd years. And then I realized, okay, let's pave a new path. Let's pave a new path. And that's all I did. I didn't have to journal for this. I didn't have to do anything for this. I just kept telling myself, Chery, pave a new path. Go in love, go in excitement, go in joy, go in whatever. Just keep doing it. Don't have to tell yourself you're beautiful in the mirror if you don't feel like it. That's a part of self-love.
100%.
If you feel like you're lying to yourself to create self-love and it feels like a lie, that's not self-love.
100%.
Sorry, I don't believe it. For me, I don't believe it.
I agree. I completely agree.
So then I would look in the mirror and say, Chery, you don't necessarily feel beautiful today, but you're a human being. You've got eyes, nose, and mouth. You've got everything every other person has. You're a human being. If you're not as beautiful as freaking Giselle Bundchen or whoever's hot right now, that's okay. You're a human being. You are as God made you. And that's my go-to phrase. You are as God made you. You are as God made you. You are as God made you. And that's it. And that's all I'm going to accept. And then at some point I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, you know, you look pretty good today. All right. You go, girl. Maybe not today, but I'm like, you go, girl. That outfit was fly.
You are beautiful.
Stop.
Absolutely gorgeous. And I mean it.
We're not playing this game now. Yeah, so that was it. I sort of like hijacked my way into self-loving myself, into like acceptance, into loving, into just being like, I am my own mother. This is what it is. Everything is what it is. Nothing is serious. For God's sake, like, I mean, ask me in about a week, maybe when I'm feeling a bit more wobbly, how I feel then. I think things will be a lot more serious. But I don't know. I can't say that I have massive advice for people. I do actually have one thing to say about journaling. Something I started doing to build trust in myself was I started creating a list called My Foundational Truths. I've been telling everybody about this.
Okay.
And what I started doing is writing down lists, making a list of things that I fundamentally believe are true about me. And it's not about my hair color, my eye color, my skin color, nothing of that sort. It's things about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that I wrote down is I am not in a space of survival, because that's what I intrinsically believed. I was constantly surviving. That's why I was going into fear. The moment I realized I'm not surviving, I was able to say, okay, you don't have to be scared right now. How can we do this out of love? So that was a practice that I started to cultivate. Another thing that I realized or wrote down was I have the same thing as everybody else, right? I am the 11th person in the room. This is something that I heard from Matthew Hussey. I am just as equal as everyone else. Therefore, I'm entitled to everything that everyone else is entitled to. Whatever I give to other people, I deserve the same thing back. I don't need to be a people pleaser. That was a foundational truth. Another one was in all of the negative experiences I've had in my life, even though I felt at the time that things were taken away from me, if I look at myself now, I got my hands, I got my feet, I got my organs, I got my heart, my soul, my everything, my brain. Nothing has been taken away from me, but everything was given to me in those opportunities. So these foundational truths, creating those lists of truths about myself, had done leaps and bounds to helping me anchor myself in something that I can believe in. If I did it once, I can do it again.
100%, I agree.
Does that make sense?
100%. It's clear, crystal clear. Like, honestly, it's so beautiful like, what you said, because I was just thinking about it. I think nowadays people are so not obsessed, but I'm not saying people, but very often we're like, oh, that girl, she's beautiful, or that boy is handsome, but there's more to just beauty. That's something that I truly believe. Don't get me wrong, they were blessed.
God gave with two hands. I'll say that much.
Exactly. So they're blessed, but I think what's very important, it's from what's within, and the beauty of your journey is that you actually took action, and I think this is the most important thing. When you know that what's the problem, I'd say, and then you're like, okay, I need to fix this. And taking that action is one of the biggest and hardest steps to take. Among these steps, I know it was about a book that you were reading.
Yes.
That helped you a lot, right?
Yes. And this was a recommendation from my sister. So the whole concept of love and fear is mentioned in this book. Actually, it's a fundamental part of this book, The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing to read, although my sister gave it to me at the height of my emotional difficulties with my work situation. Because at that point, my thing to her, and I do sometimes still say this, none of this was my choice. Choosing to cultivate this sense of awareness, this sense of self-compassion, this wasn't my choice. I didn't choose for this journey. And even this morning, I was talking to my mom and I was like, this wasn't my choice. I didn't want to be in this situation where I have to continue to explore myself, not only emotionally, but professionally. I am thinking of starting new endeavors. I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I'm good at. I didn't ask for this. I wanted to do the same thing I've been doing for the past 6 odd years. But at the peak of me saying that I did not want this is not my choice, my sister gave me this book and she was like, just read it. And being the stubborn younger sister that I am, I didn't read it. Although, to be fair, the calling wasn't there at the time. And then I finally opened it towards the last 3 months of my my employment, my contract. And I fell in love. I was like, yes, I want to live in love. I don't want to live in fear. Fear is comfortable. My therapist has been saying this to me. My sister has been saying this to me. Everybody that I know, my parents have been saying it to me. Stop living in fear. I am scared of everything. And I was like, I don't want this. There has to be another way. There has to be another way. There has to be a way where I can tap into that reservoir of love that we all have. And I realized this as well in this journey, that I am fundamentally love. I love everyone and everything. I just love. When I see people dancing and singing, I get a bit emotional. I watch a musical, I cry. I love seeing people just being people. You know, it's such a cool thing. And that only could come from a place of love, right?
I agree.
And so this book really spoke to me in that way. I mean, yeah, it does read a bit cheesy at times, but it was so accessible and it was so fantastic in supporting me with my journaling as well. That's the book that helped me in tandem journal for the first time properly. But it did help me realize that nothing is impossible. If I really want to channel love, I can do it. Instead of saying I can't, it's a matter of saying I won't.
Exactly.
If I don't want to channel, my higher self, then I won't do it. Stop saying you can't. I can do literally anything I want to do.
Exactly. And one thing you mentioned ever since, like, we were talking about the way we speak to each other, that is something that is very important. People take it lightly, but I truly believe that what you say about yourself impacts you on a daily basis.
100%.
Even if you don't see it like straight away, but subconsciously, you're actually putting it in your mind, and it's like a record in your mind, like, okay, if this is blue, this will be blue. And even if you tell me, no, this is not, this is gray, I'll tell you, no, this is blue. Because in my mind, I keep repeating the same thing on and on and on again, which also leads to what we were talking about the fact that very often, and we were talking about that just before we started, very often people will stay in that comfort zone just because obviously that's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment that you start breaking that comfort zone and you going through that change, that uncomfortableness, if that's even a word, is what people fear. But then you realize that once you break it and you took that step, it's fine. It's a fear that we put in our mind. It's a limiting belief that we put in, like, from within, and be like, oh no, I can't do that. But little do you know that you actually can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just a mindset game.
I like to speak in metaphors, and this may be a pretty shitty one. This is the first time I'm using it. But when you're trying to give a child a food or a medicine that they don't like, you will try to like hide it in sweets or candies. I think you do that for dogs. I don't know if you do it for children. I don't know. But you'll try to hide it. You'll try to get that medicine in them in whichever way is possible, right? And that's the same thing that we should do to ourselves, or we can do to ourselves. You don't have to medicine feed something to you if it doesn't work in that way. You will find a way for it to come to a place of comfort.
Yeah.
Easily.
100%.
And it will happen. It's a natural process where you will start to lean into that love for yourself, And it starts off as being work, but then somehow it just becomes effortless. And you see, the way it worked for me is seeing myself as a science experiment, approaching it with curiosity, because to tell yourself, stop living in fear and start living in love, you're like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, what do you... what? And that's exactly what I said to my sister, because she kept saying this to me, and I'm like, girl, you need to stop. She kept saying surrender, and I'm like, what is that?
Surrender to what?
I don't know what this means. But she was so right. I have to surrender. But the question was, how? That was the thing I kept asking her, because her version of surrender and my version of surrender is two very different things. My sister is such a resilient human being, and she has, from what I know of her, from the past 33 years of being her sister, she has such a strong foundational understanding of herself, whereas for me, I thought my favorite color was pink. So I started to hijack my way into loving myself in ways that were a bit more curious and experimentational. And I think that's my recommendation for people that have a hard time with doing certain things or trying to get themselves to love each other, love themselves, is to view it as an experiment. And in my last few months of work, when I was reading this book, I started to notice the days when I was not in a good mood, especially crabby. For whatever reason, I overslept or I underslept, whatever it may be, I would notice people weren't coming to talk to me, because my classroom was the revolving doors. My friends would come in during the free periods. We'd always sit there. We'd eat together. People would be coming in and out all the time. And it was such a beautiful thing. And I noticed that the days where I was feeling especially joyous and bubbly like I feel today, it would just be constant. Yeah. And the days where I was feeling terrible, it was radio silence. And there were moments in the past, if that happened to me, where I'd look at that and be like, look, Chery, everyone hates you, you're disgusting, blah, blah, blah. But no, at that moment, these moments, more recently, I was like, what an experiment. The energy that I'm putting out is energy I'm going to receive. It has nothing to do with them and their perception of me. It has everything to do with me and my perception of myself.
Exactly.
And that science experiment, first of all, allowed me to exercise compassion over myself. If I feel like shit that day, I feel like shit. It's simple. It's fine. If people don't want to come to me, they don't want to come to me. I don't want people to come to me today. It's cool. So I didn't hate myself because I believed that people hated me. I just accepted that my energies weren't necessarily that attractive. Fine. That particular moment, you know? And it's that science experiment, that viewing it as let's see the cause and effect of this. Let's see the cause and effect of this. Let's see the cause and effect of this. Let's choose the best one and go with it.
Yeah.
It's so much more interesting that way.
I love it. It's like you get to try everything and know what's the best for you.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what else are we going to do in our human body
Exactly.
for the rest of our lives other than see things as an experiment?
Exactly.
You know?
And I think, the thing that you mentioned is that at the end of the day, we got to do what's best for us, not for what's best for anyone around us. Because it's our life. And like you said, life is short.
It is.
So we got to make most of it,
Exactly.
Where are you at now in your self-awareness journey?
I feel like I know everything that I need to know about myself for right now.
Mm-hmm.
That means I'm not going to access or try to access other parts of me until they just come forth. I don't want to force myself. Right now, my goal is working on my physical health, internal, external. That's where I'm at. I've decided. And then when the universe calls me to take another step, I'll take another step. Perhaps I'm taking steps even as I'm saying I'm not taking other steps. I don't know. But at the moment, I feel great and I feel scared, but I feel like the excited scared, you know? And I think that fear is fine. Fear is a protective tool. It's okay to feel fearful if you're still willing to take steps forward with that fear. I mean, doing this, for example, this is a big thing for me. Sitting here on a podcast in front of the cameras, on a microphone, it's a big, big thing for me. If you asked me to do this a year ago, I probably would have said no. Actually, no, I would have definitely said no. But it's the fear that propels me forward that's more important than the fear that holds me back. And I'm okay with being scared as long as I continue to wake up every morning and say, look, let's finish up a project and start a new one. Let's finish up a project, let's start a new one. Let's see what else I can access. Yeah. I see that life is limitless and it's beautiful. And 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, look, I hope life is short for me. I want it to go on forever. I think this is really cool. It's really, really cool.
I'm happy.
Yeah. And I want that for everyone. I want everyone to... I know that the world is a scary place at times. I know that there's a lot of things that are happening that we can't necessarily explain, but I mean, it's such a beautiful little thing to be here, right? To see people. My friend is a huge animal activist, and when we traveled together, she kept looking at the animals and being like, I don't care about people. Screw the people. I want to see the dogs. I want to see the cats. And I just kept looking at the people and I was like, what are your stories? Like, who are you? Sometimes when I look at a person, I can see the child form of themselves. When people are dancing and singing, being their freest version, I get emotional because I see them as the child version of themselves. I feel like this part's going to make me cry because it's such a beautiful thing to see how dynamic this experience is, you know? And I'm so grateful for everything that's happened to me and for me, because I would not be able to be here right now in this beautiful space and time. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And honestly, do you know the whole reason why I wanted you to come here?
It's because you think I'm cool.
Yeah, that too. But over time, as I got to know you, and I know that I have so much more to learn about you, but as I got to know you, I was like, I always said to myself, she's fucking resilient. And her story is such an inspiration for me as a woman, looking at another woman, working on herself, fighting for what she believes and what really makes her happy, is for me a great example. It's like, yeah, and you're so authentic. Like, you're okay being low, but you're also okay to show your highs and your lows. And it's so beautiful. It's not a lot of people that are able to take that step and that action and be like, you know what? I want to work on myself. I need to do it for me and only me.
And I appreciate you saying this, obviously in so many ways. Thank you. And I mean this genuinely from the bottom. Thank you. But it helps sometimes, and this is the thing that sometimes I'm scared to admit, that I need people to tell me this, to remind me of who I am. I need people to remind me, hey, look, you sit, you sleep in bed, you lie down and you think to yourself, Chery, you're doing a really great job. But then that's my delusion, right? That's my delusion that I'm choosing to believe you're working really hard. And then I'm like, Chery, but you haven't done shit today. You haven't done anything. You cross-stitched and then went to the gym and that's it. That can't be your day. That's not resilient. But then hearing these reminders to say, hey, look, actually, you know what, Chery, you are doing a lot. You are changing and evolving a lot. It helps me realize actually this time has not been for waste, because there are moments where I think, what am I doing? But then you remind me, and then I remind myself, and I look back in time and I look at pictures of myself when I was younger, and I think, man, you were not having a good time. And now I am having a good time. It is cool. It's great to be vulnerable. And it's great to know that you can share these experiences with other people. It's what I bring out is what you bring out. We're mirrors of each other at the end of the day, right?
And honestly, I love it. And I know a healing or self-awareness or any kind of journey in life is never ending. I can't even ask you, do you think you're fully healed? Because I think you're always working on it. I cannot say I'm fully healed.
No.
It's a daily work on myself. It's a daily reminder of myself of what I've been through and where I am at the moment, But I wish you all the best in that journey.
Thank you. And you will find that through the rest of your life, a specific event that you've experienced will come up over and over again in your life, but it'll come up like, I saw this video on Instagram of this person who had used a light and then just rotated the light around a woman's face, and then it highlighted different parts of her face, and she just looked completely different every time the light had moved. And that's what happens to us in our traumatic events. The light will show up and show us that trauma from a different perspective, and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta work on it from this angle now, and we have to keep doing that over and over and over again for the rest of our lives. Every year we add on to our lives adds a new perspective onto a trauma that we've had in the past.
Exactly.
Right? It just adds another layer for us to work on. But again, with curiosity, with excitement, that trauma is not going to come back again. It's not going to bite you in the ass. It's done. It's buried. It's another experiment.
Exactly.
And
I think, like, for me personally, I see, for example, when I think about my personal journey, it's like a vicious circle. It repeats, and that can happen in a lap of a year. And I'll see that the circle repeating and repeating. And then at some point you're like, okay, hold on a minute. That can't be the external factors. It comes from within. But what it is actually external factors saying, okay, you got to work on that. That's the reason why it keeps showing up. And recently, very recently, something I've been working on, and it came back to me, like something happened to me. I can't really go into details into that, but something came in suddenly, and it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago. I was actually thinking about that, and I was like, "Ooh, see, it's actually a test. Why do you feel that? Why do you have that urge right now? Even though you know that this is the wrong choice, but why do you want to go for this?" And I'm like, it's maybe life testing me to see if I really learned the lesson or not.
And to see that you have choices, right?
Exactly.
Like all you have in life are choices. We think we don't have a choice and we have to do something. No. You have choices. And even those choices have choices. Like, we can decide our own fate. Sort of like those Goosebump books. I don't know if you ever read them, where you can choose your own ending. It's sort of like that. You can choose whatever you want to choose, right?
Exactly.
It's mental. And especially when you repeat the cycle of something that feels the same, actually, no, you've progressed from that specific situation.
Yes.
Then you meet another situation that looks eerily similar, but there is a difference to it, you know? And then you learn something new. I tell my friends this about dating. She had kept going on dates with people that she was like, not quite right. Very Goldilocks situation, you know? And she's like, why can't I find the right guy? And I'm like, no, you're playing capture the flag, right? You're just going around and you're collecting more green flags from different men. You're seeing the things that you like from them and you're building this perfect man in your head. Exactly. So you may think that you're going around and around in a circle and you're meeting the same type of guy every single time who's almost perfect but not quite right. No, you're just collecting new flags. And then at this point, you have X amount, I don't know how many. You're going to meet the final boss in the video game and you're going to marry that man and you're going to be great. You know,
Exactly.
You think things are the same. They're not the same.
I agree. Completely agree. Love.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have to end.
That's okay.
I have to.
I got things to do.
Don't worry. We're going to do. I would love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Maybe, let's say 6 months from now.
Yeah, a little check-in. We'll see how we're doing.
Yeah, let's do a little check-in.
Maybe I'll fix my hair for that
You
one.
are absolutely gorgeous, woman. I don't know, but
I'm fishing for compliments.
But before I end and I start, so my ending, I have a tradition also. But before I go into that, just to kind of wrap up what we talked about self-awareness, if you could just highlight for me, what are the key components for you for self-awareness that was important to you at least?
Approaching it with non-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no judgment with whatever you come to face with about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have one anecdote that I wanted to share, and I'll save that for next time, about my relationship with eating and how I practice that compassion with that, but we'll save it for later. So do everything with compassion and do things as they're presented to you. Don't force self-awareness. You know, it's like when people cram for an exam, right before the exam, you can only learn so much. You know, let things come to you when they're meant to come to you, which is why when you ask me where I am where I am. What am I going to learn? I don't know. I'll figure it out when I learn it. So just take things as they go. Be compassionate to yourself and to others, because that's the most important thing. You learn about yourself through learning about others. And that's it. Just be willing to be alive, not alive.
Thank you for that, for sharing these beautiful advices. But I'm also glad that you mentioned about emotional eating and eating disorders, because last week I had Natasha. I don't know if you saw the episode. She's emotional eating coach. Maybe it's one of she's a coach for people who goes through eating disorder. And it was beautiful, because obviously, you know, also that I went through eating disorders. I would love, honestly, that we keep going that way. But I have few minutes left.
That's okay. No, we'll save that. There's so much more we could discuss.
Yeah.
There's so much more we could discuss.
So this is an official invite. You're coming back on me as well.
I'd love that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Now I have a tradition.
Yes.
For my closing of each episode, I have a rapid fire question.
Oof. Okay.
It's fun.
Okay.
It looks scary, but it's not scary.
Yeah, I saw that on the list and I was like, what the hell is she going to ask? Okay, go for it.
Are you ready?
Do it. I mean, I'll ever be.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? 3, 2, 1. What is your favorite season?
Spring. No, fall.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's your go-to lazy dinner?
My pasta carbonara Cheesecake Factory.
Okay.
Love it.
Cat or dog?
Cat.
Okay.
Oh my God, both cat.
Okay. Beach or forest?
Forest.
All right. What is your biggest fear?
Cockroaches. And dying.
If you could go back in time, would you change anything? No?
No.
Why?
Because I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you if things were even marginally different. Butterfly effect.
I love that. And I love butterflies. This is my...
there you go.
Like, honestly, because I believe into that. And that, like,
the signs and synchronicities?
Yeah. And
we're saving that for another conversation because I got tons of those.
And not just that, but like, you know how it goes from a caterpillar to the little cocoon
the evolution,
to the... I feel like this is the perfect image of how I see a human being be. Like, you will always... And I thought it was only me, but the more and more I get to meet people, I see what was the caterpillar moment, what was the cocoon moment, and what was that butterfly moment.
And the cocoon moment is my favorite because you have to rest, right? Yes. You have to rest in some way, shape, or form. The evolution happens internally.
Exactly.
You know, and then you emerge and you're like, wow, my God, she's so beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. Last
Bring it on.
If you could give one advice to your younger self, which one would it be?
You know what? I don't know. The only thing that I want to give to my younger self is a hug.
That's fine.
And I do that every day. Yeah. Advice? No, just hang in there, girl. You got this. You got this. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Chery, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for being vulnerable. You are truly a beautiful soul and a beautiful person.
Takes one to know one.
And honestly, I can't wait for part 2.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you for this. I'm so grateful that I got to be here with you.
Thank you for taking the step.
Absolutely.
And you
Always.
smashed it, by the way. So on that note, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll see you in the next one. Ugh, I got to do that. Wait, I got to do it. All right. On that note, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.